It's been a long time since I got into academia. Maybe around 2014 when I started my PhD, and I haven't looked back. I've been an academic since then. I'm currently finishing up a manuscript of a book called Corporations, Technology and the Law, The Future of the Corporate Form.
By the way, I love the
Yeah.
title of your blog, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Corporate Governance,
Yeah.
right? So I'm assuming you're a big Douglas Adams fan.
I'm a sci-fi fan, but
Okay.
yeah, I like his. It's because I started the blog during COVID, and that book is sort of like a fun, happy read that you can go back to. So I used it because that's the mood of the blog, to just deal with serious issues, but also have fun with them, and also deal with fun issues. I think sometimes I review movies from a corporate law
Oh,
perspective.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
In your blog, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Corporate Governance, you mention wanting to teach this dream course on Elon Musk called The Law of Elon Musk, studying corporate governance through the lens of this one particular individual. That can be fascinating. So just tell us about what was your thought process behind wanting to teach this course on Elon Musk?
I told you this is a tongue-in-cheek blog. If we can call this podcast the Elon Musk show, because we brought him up in
Almost every other conversation, every other question, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's because a lot of my research, different areas that I work on, are on sort of new emerging issues. And in a lot of those stories, someone who's like Elon Musk, a maverick CEO exploring new avenues, they're creating the vacuum for which law needs to be, or maybe for us to question if existing law is actually fit for purpose, or maybe are we already over regulating things. I love to emphasize first principles because I feel today we're reading certain laws 10 years later, maybe the law has changed, maybe there's a brand new area that you have to think about policy before a law has come. It helps if you have that first principles thinking in you.
The idea of having a bigger university, which is not just entirely law focused, but you have access to these other disciplines. I totally resonate with that because when I was in Berkeley, I had similar experience, right? So the biggest advantage you can have in a university is you get to meet people from different disciplines.
Yeah.
You get to see how they think, what they talk about. And there's so much exchange of ideas. In fact, one of my most favorite things about Berkeley was actually this. You get to talk to computer scientists, you get to talk to business folks. You also can take courses on dramatics, theater, and things like that. So actually that makes the education much more exciting is what I feel.
In Newcastle, where I first went, this tiny place, there's this emphasis on, okay, but are you getting around? Are you seeing the beaches? What have you done for the last 2 months if you haven't gone to the beaches? So I really like that. Initially, I was like, what? But now I think I'm more like that.
So I think there was this underlying emphasis on work-life balance.
Yeah, or emphasis on life.
Life,
Yeah.
right. Today we are in conversation with Akshaya Kamal Nath, Associate Professor at the Australian National University Law School. Her research and teaching are focused on corporate law and corporate regulation. Her recent focus has been tech disruptions to the corporation and corporate behavior and responses from corporate law. She has also consulted for companies in these areas. Akshaya's scholarship is often comparative, and her work has appeared in law journals in Australia, New Zealand, India, UK, and the US. Akshaya is the author of The Corporate Diversity Jigsaw and the creator of the blog, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Corporate Governance. Hi, Akshaya, welcome. I'm so glad we're doing this in person. I just realized I haven't met you since the time I graduated from NALSAR, which is a long, long time. So tell us a bit about what you've been doing these days.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you in person after all these years, as you said. What I've been doing these years, it's been a long time since I got into academia. Maybe around 2014 when I started my PhD, and I haven't looked back. I've been an academic since then. I'm currently finishing up a manuscript of a book called Corporations, Technology and the Law, The Future of the Corporate Form. So that's taking up all my energy at the moment. And I'm also supposed to be on holidays this month, but I'm glad to be doing this.
Yeah, I'm really excited for your second book. It's coming out, sometime this year?
Hopefully, but academic publishing timelines are slow, so we'll see. Hopefully, at least by the end of 2026.
Sure. So, actually, let's go back to your NALSAR days. You graduated from NALSAR in the top tier of your class, academically very strong. Then you went on to join Amarchand Mangaldas, which of course has split into Cam and Sam now, and which is a dream stint for many even today. So, you were at Amarchand for a year and then went on to pursue your master's at NYU. And after NYU, you took the decision to do your PhD at Deakin University. So, what was it about NYU, intellectually and academically, that made you realize that teaching and research might be the right next step for you? So, what was it about NYU that made you take this decision? Also, how was NYU different from Nalsar days?
Oh, what was it about NYU once I went to NYU? Okay, so I sort of paused at the question because I know many friends at NALSAR who always wanted to do a master's would have a lot of research on where they want to study. I hadn't done any of this. I was a year in the law firm with a busy life and not thinking too much. And then when I said I needed a break, I was like, I always want to be in New York City, so let's do it. So that's how I even chose NYU. But it turned out to be a pretty good choice because there was a lot of people from every direction, right? So there were NYU being in NYC meant there are people there in wanting to be in business, wanting to be in law firms, but also it had quite a strong. I think they still have the a center on liberal thought or liberal studies or something. So the people associated with that. Also, the some of the courses I took were. I did a lot of transactional law courses, so I didn't quite think I want to be an academic at that point. Um, I just picked the subjects I thought I would like.
Right.
So I picked bankruptcy law that was taught by a judge who with a lot of experience as a bankruptcy judge. I did securitization by taught by two law firm partners. Another course where I had a partner in a law firm from the US, one from France, and that was cross-border M&A. But I also ended up sort of without planning for it, doing some random courses with writing credits attached to them. So one such course was Asian American jurisprudence, and I did a writing credit on a topic that I wouldn't have thought I'm interested in. It was on the cultural defense, so a little bit of evidence and criminal law.
Okay.
It's not something I work on at this point, but if I think back to my year at NYU, I think it was all about just exploring new ideas.
Okay.
And that year also made me see academia as actually an option. I actually like this. I actually like writing stuff. I like the classroom discussions. You asked about the difference in NALSAR and NYU in terms of
The approach to law, teaching law, or even to
Okay.
your general experience per se.
my general experience, I think, was I found it really better in a way to be part of a full university than just a law school.
Yeah. Right.
So NALSAR had, I think we had a limited number of people, all doing law.
Correct.
In a way, it's good because we know everyone so well. I'm talking to you after so long, but we've had these interactions when we were back. But in a bigger university, you may not know everybody in your class. But in another way, you have like classes that are, you have LLM students, local JD students,
Right.
a lot of mixed classes in law itself. But
Correct.
even beyond that, there were business students. I had initially signed up for a negotiation course with Stern Business School. You can shop, you can go to a few classes, then you can go or not go. So, and also we'd speak to people from other areas just in parties or mixers and events. So I
Correct.
liked that. I'd also spoken to some JSD students, which is what a PhD is in the US. And hearing about their experience also made, it even planted that idea, the seed of that idea that this path exists, maybe just because I knew people who were doing JSDs. But I wasn't quite, even through my NYU year, I didn't think I want to be an academic. But I think towards the end, I was a teaching assistant. I stayed on as a teaching assistant for one of my professors, and I thought I liked that. But also during the year, in the writing I liked that. But in terms of approach to teaching, I really liked the emphasis on you read, come, and we just talk about things, and then the emphasis on first principles. Yes, there is a lot of courses I took had a doctrinal bent in terms of, we've read extracts of cases, we want to talk about what was held in those cases, but there was also a very first principles, law and economic underpinnings of corporate law. Why do we have these laws? And I think that's influenced my teaching style till today. I don't quite follow the US system of very strict Socratic cold calling, and
Right.
I don't follow that now when I teach in Australia, but I do like a little bit, some amount of back and forth, asking questions. But I love to emphasize first principles because I feel today we're reading certain laws. 10 years later, we're working when maybe the law has changed. Maybe there's a brand new area that you have to think about policy before a law has come. It helps if you have that first principles
Approach,
thinking in
correct.
you. So yeah, I think that's what I liked at NYU. And sorry, all of this sounds like I'm not being critical of NALSAR. I'm just saying what I, because after spending 5 years in NALSAR, I'm looking at all the things that were great and different at
Right.
NYU.
No, in fact,
So
I totally agree with you when you say that, the idea of having a bigger university, which is not just entirely law focused, but you have access to these other disciplines. I totally resonate with that because when I was in Berkeley, I had similar experience, right? So the biggest advantage you can have in a university is you get to meet people from different disciplines.
Yeah.
You get to see how they think, what they talk about. And there's so much exchange of ideas. In fact, one of my most favorite things about Berkeley was actually this. You get to
Yeah.
talk to computer scientists, you get to talk to business folks. You also can take courses on dramatics, theater, and things like
Yeah.
that. So actually, that makes the education much more exciting, is what I feel.
That was fun. And one more thing I should mention, because this is, I think, the key point of, I think, where law schools in India may want to improve. That is just having exposure to a diversity of ideas, and not being very one-sided in how we approach questions. So I found at NYU different courses I took. Each one came with their own worldview, each professor, but we were always exposed to critiques of that view, and we were free to disagree. So I like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with the point you're making here. So, Akshay, you went from NYU to Deakin. Tell us a bit about your experience at Australia, Deakin, and your whole experience of actually settling down in a new country. Did you have any sort of experiences, very peculiar experiences, both positive and negative, or any sort of cultural dissonances that you had to sort of navigate while, doing your PhD studies at Deakin University?
Oh, actually, it's a funny story. I didn't quite go to Deakin straight away. I went to
Newcastle, yeah, right.
Newcastle University, and the whole point was I didn't have any research about Australia or about these places before
Okay.
I went. I just felt like I want to work with this professor, and that's how I approached my PhD. By the way, I was like, whom I want to work with. And he was, I think, moving to Newcastle, or had just moved to Newcastle when I spoke to my potential supervisor. And that's how I landed up without too much thought about the place.
Leap of faith.
Yeah, and I'd been to New York City before that. Maybe I felt that now I can go anywhere.
Right.
But actually, it was quite funny. Once I arrived in Newcastle, that's a tiny place, very pretty beaches and all of this. But my initial shock was how everything would shut at 5 p.m. And I'm like a night person. So yeah, those were, I think, cultural differences. But also, I would have some people question, like, I think I remember going to a coffee place or somewhere. I said I just arrived yesterday, or no, I think it may have been a month. I just arrived a month ago, and then the person responded, "Wow, and your English is so good." But this is a common immigrant experience in like places where they
That's
don't know.
happened to me as well. Yes.
Right? Yeah. So, but at that time, I was in complete shock. But now it's like every other person faces that.
Right.
Maybe another point of difference, maybe because I moved from Bangalore, generally Indian cities are fast paced, and
Right.
there's a very strong work ethic.
Mm.
And same in New York. So I used to work in my library late at night, mostly because I slept in the day. But still, there's this sort of strong work ethic. And in Australia, what I really, particularly in Newcastle, where I first went, this tiny place, there's this emphasis on, okay, but are you getting around? Are you seeing the beaches? What have you done for the last 2 months if you haven't gone to the beaches? So I really like that. Initially, I was like, what? But now I think I'm more like that.
So I think there was this underlying emphasis on work-life balance.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Or emphasis on life.
Life,
Yeah.
right? that must have been a welcome change, right?
Yeah, I mean that's Newcastle, but Melbourne was
It's
was
different?
yeah.
Okay.
There's still emphasis on the balance,
Uh-huh.
but Newcastle was even more so much on go explore nature, explore the beaches.
Right. So let me ask you a more fundamental question about PhD itself. There's a lot of skepticism around why anybody should do a PhD these days, right? Especially in a field like law. People often say, hey, it's too theoretical. There is no industry, academia nexus. It has no real world impact. And I'm not saying this. This is a general sort of, a response that you give. You get these responses even, by the way, in, in-house environments as well. So as well as they say, if you're not working in or working on a PhD, which is in a hardcore science subject like physics or computer science, what's even the point of doing it, right? So I want to understand, as somebody who has been through the rigor of doing a PhD in the field of law, what is really the purpose of a PhD in law?
At this point in my career, I do talk to people who ask me, maybe those in the beginning of the PhD when they approach me saying, with a proposal, can I, potential supervisees. So I actually take time to talk to them about why they want to do a PhD. Are you really, just to get a sense whether they will it's the right fit for them, because it has to be if you're going to really give it your all for the 3 years or however long you take to do it. But at that point, when I decided to do a PhD, I wasn't thinking so much about world impact, and I was thinking of myself. What do I want to do?
Yeah.
So I had so I'd worked in a law firm. I thought I'd be work that was I was open to going back to law firm life, I guess, when I went to do my masters, because I just didn't know any better, like what else will I do.
Right.
But since NYU opened up so many things to me, I still didn't land on immediately at the end I want to do a PhD, I want to be an academic. I just realized I don't want to go back to that law firm life. And then I was thinking of, okay, because I'd done the teaching assistant bit and I liked it. I thought, let me explore, because as an academic, you need to like to teach and you need to like to research. I found I like to research through read and explore things through my masters. So then I actually went back to NALSAR to teach for a semester,
Right.
which was also fun because the the Companies Act had changed. Our new the 1956 thing that we studied was I think it's just changed to the new one. So I got it felt like I'm sort of breaking new ground, so it was fun. So I realized, okay, I like to teach, I like research. Then if I want to become an academic, this is the entry point. Just like how if you want to be a lawyer, you do a wax scheme or an internship, and so it's just the pathway. So that was my thinking. And then beyond that, I think this is different in different countries, but because had I thought of this when I was at NYU, I would have cultivated those relationships with professors I might have wanted to work with. I wasn't quite thinking of that. And in the US, that's important, by the way, to have that relationship while you were there. But I knew I didn't want to do a very US centric thesis. I wanted to be more comparative, explore some newer areas. So I was thinking of a few areas to work on. Towards the end, I think after I finished studying at NYU, I was there as a TA, right? A common friend of ours, Yamini.
Yeah.
So she had just finished studying at Columbia, and we both wrote an article on gender diversity on corporate boards. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there was a new law in India and we'd written about that. So I think the supervisor I worked with saw my proposal. usually now when I think from my perspective right now, I also, when I look at uh, PhD applications, I look at the proposal not just for is this idea worth pursuing, but also is this person, does it display enough depth of research, then I can push them in a different direction. So my supervisor then looked at my CV and said, you've written on the board diversity stuff, would you be interested in working on that, have a think. So then I thought of that, read more, and then saw there's a lot to think and write about here, because as you'll see from any of my writing on diversity, it goes against the grain. It's very different from what academic writing there is. So when I feel there's something new to say, I thought, yeah, okay, I can work on this. So that's all I was thinking of, and that's how I entered it. But you're right that it's, for people on the outside, they may say, I've never really thought of what people on the outside say about my life choices. I do things that suit my journey and what I want to do. And I think whether it's a PhD or anything, if you think you can make a difference, you will be happy doing it in that pathway that you're choosing. You should just do it. And I don't think I'm so far removed from reality, even though I'm an academic. So it's fine. You, as long as, and I know people who are they may do very theoretical work, which is fine. There's a place for that too. It's not totally useless. Maybe the rest of society doesn't see it,
Right.
but I have referenced a lot of theoretical academics work, and I take from their research to write my sort of work, which may not be that theoretical. Sometimes I do write theoretical stuff, not too often.
Right.
So everything, there's a value in everything.
Understood. So, Akshay, I want to point this out, right? You're a very dynamic academic from what I've seen. Every time I see you on social media, I see you either presenting a paper at some new country, some new university, collaborating with university for some research or teaching collab, or, you've already written 2 books. I mean, the second book is going to be out very soon. So when you're, doing all of this, one of the things about academia is that a lot of academic writing, though very relevant, gets hidden in long form journal articles, or it's behind paywalls, right? And on the other side, in today's world, when you look at social media, it's all about these instant dopamine hits and short attention span. And it's all about reels and shots and quick short formats like in Twitter and now X. So do you see real value? I mean, at least I have seen you on social media, right? And I have seen a couple of other folks doing PhD on X, also on LinkedIn, who are quite active. I don't know if this is the exception to the rule or if this is the norm, right? So do you see any value or real value in academia adopting to these or adapting to these platforms to ensure that these serious ideas are disseminated in better formats?
I don't know that we do it to disseminate our ideas.
Or just engage with the public?
This is what I don't know, that we might it might happen that when we post stuff on X or LinkedIn or whatever, it might happen that other people who are non-academics respond, and I'm very happy because that gives me I like diverse views on areas that I'm writing on. So it gives me those views, and I'm happy with that. I don't know if that's the main focus of many academics who do it. It's almost like, so there's a whole, I might be researching on some topic, and then I might be looking at journals and all of that to find things about what I'm looking at. But if I follow a whole lot of academics whose writing I like, then I actually see little snippets of what they're working on. And when I'm writing, I know there's that thing that I need to look for. So it's also, academics use it for each other also.
Right.
But the reason I say I don't think that's specifically meant to interact with the outside world is because it's fine, it's good, but it's an informal way of interacting. This is one of the reasons I actually set up my blog, because I do want to interact with the outside world, but I'm very keen to have my nuanced positions properly represented. Sometimes I've refused media interviews as well, because I've had sometimes I've done some interviews and then I've not quite liked how they've just taken a bite, and then it's not the message I'm going
It's out
for.
of context.
Yeah. And a funny story, I did a podcast interview for a radio channel about board diversity. So there was me and a male board director,
Okay.
giving two views. And then when it was released so this radio channel also has a news outlet. In the news outlet, I saw only the male director's face at the top. And I was like, that's not the message that a diversity
That's
podcast needs to
absurd.
give. Yeah,
Huh.
so there's different sort of they have their own incentives, right, in media. So there's I picked my own, like I decided to start my own blog, but then we also have some academic blogs that are particularly tailored to representing academic views, but in an accessible way. So in my area, the Oxford Business Law blog, Columbia Blue Sky blog, there's few of these. I think I don't know if they're also particularly meant for the outside world, but it's simple enough that anyone can, you're searching on a topic and you find one of these blog pieces. It's simple and accessible. You've heard of The Conversation? That's another outlet. It's called The Conversation. It's there
I
in,
might have heard it, but no, I can't recollect
so
right now.
it's country specific. You have The Conversation Australia, The
No,
Conversation
I don't think
Canada.
I've read that.
So that's specifically meant for academics to speak to the outside world.
Okay, okay.
But even there, I have a problem. I've published some articles, some posts on The Conversation, which I quite felt this is a public debate. I want to say something. Do you remember James Damore being fired for what he said about diversity? He was working at Google. I've written something on that. It was a very controversial issue. There was a lot in the news. I felt like I need to have a calmer.
When was this?
2017-16, a
Okay,
long time
okay.
ago. So I felt like I need to have a calmer view out to the public, and I think this did take. The Conversation piece did go reach many audiences that I wouldn't have otherwise reached, because then they wrote in, and so that was nice.
Okay.
But yeah, my blog, I think I also get frustrated. I'm very impatient, I think. I get frustrated by academic publishing timelines. It's normal in academia. Maybe at some point when I'm very old, I'll accept it. But but I get it now, because now I'm a referee on many things. Sometimes I'm late on them because we're time poor. So I get it. But I felt like I want a place to test out my ideas quickly in short form, and then think through, have a long form thing. So I started my blog. So I don't know, it's about maybe also topic specific.
By the way, I love the
Yeah.
title of your blog, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Corporate Governance,
Yeah,
right? So I'm
because-
assuming you're a big Douglas Adams fan.
I'm a sci-fi fan, but
Okay.
yeah, I like his. It's because I started the blog during COVID, and that book is sort of like a fun, happy read that you can go back to. So I used it because that's the mood of the blog, to just deal with serious issues, but also have fun with them, and also deal with fun issues. I think sometimes I review movies from a corporate law
Oh, that's
perspective.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So Akshaya, I wanted to ask another question related to this notion of, academia being this place where you have intellectual freedom and you get to read and write on things that you love and teach courses that you love, right? But from what I've understood in my interaction with folks who've been teaching the last 10, 15 years, is that it's not the whole truth. They also need to do a lot of work that is not necessarily, intellectually exciting, a lot of admin work. So they may sometimes not have time to do the things that they actually want to do. So how real has this tension been in your experience?
Okay, what you're saying is true, but I worked in a law firm, right?
Right.
In an Indian law firm.
Right.
Where I didn't have time to sleep. So I think when I hear people talk about, oh my God, I'm so busy, I'm so stressed in academia, I'm like, it's a relaxed job. But you're right. So I find myself working on articles on weekends, on holidays, but I could choose not to. I'm doing them because I'm passionate about
Right.
it. So if I was working on, I don't know, I'm in a law firm having to close a deal, working on a Sunday night, I'd be very grumpy. But I'm not grumpy working on my article at my time in a cafe I like. So there is the good part, and it's important to remember the good parts when you feel annoyed.
Right.
Every job has annoying
Agree.
things. Admin, I don't think, I'm not so against admin, because I quite like sometimes if we can actually solve problems. I hate bureaucracy and all of this, right? So if I feel like I'm running into red tape, then I'm like, oh, if I'm in that position, then I'll solve the problem, or I'll try and not make life so hard for others. So if I can actually achieve things, I like admin. But if I have like people who are being slow and, you know, not quite getting the crux of the problem, then I look to move to another admin role. That's what I've done all these years. But I like to think that I've enjoyed and tried to address problems in my admin roles as well.
So I'll tell you, I think it's true of all the jobs, all the professions probably. As an in-house legal counsel, as you raise up the ladder, at least 30, 40, 50% of your works becomes managerial,
Yeah.
admin related, and you have to do it to make it effective for others. You
Yeah.
just can't do without it.
Yeah.
And but the worst part is, you spend a lot of time just following up with people, the stakeholders, to get their responses for things. So that becomes that's what there are pain points everywhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to ask another question. Since you've been through the rigor of doing a PhD, what kind of personality do you think actually thrives in doing a PhD?
Okay, so there's different ways to do your PhD, right? I know people who do it part time. For that, I feel you need to be so committed because you can just become very lax. Because a part time PhD, at least in Australia, can take, I think you're allowed 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
So you can become really lax, and it's hard to keep that focus for 8 years. I did it, so I think the minimum is 3 years. Not minimum, you can do it much earlier, but
Oh,
the
as well? Okay.
standard is it's not common, but the standard is 3 years. And when I was in my third year, I think I was doing some teaching from small amount of teaching before that alongside my PhD. But in my third year, I was doing a lot of teaching. It happened just by chance. There was some urgent need in the school in my area, so I was doing that. I was finishing up my PhD, and then I told my supervisor maybe I should get an extension and do it calmly. He said that's not a conversation I want to have, and I'm so thankful because then I found like these little pockets of time in between classes. I finished taught a class, I have another, and in those pockets of time I was writing up. That's because that was the end of my PhD where I was writing things up. Before that, I was, it's slower when you're still exploring, you haven't quite landed on the right method, all of that takes longer. So maybe those initial years can be a little, when you talk about what sort of personality, maybe it feels like, okay, it's a lonely journey. Every other job you do, as a student or working in a law firm, you're talking to people, you're working together. In a PhD, it's your project. Your supervisor may meet you once in a while. You're telling the supervisor about your project. This is what I've done. This is what's out there. You're steering it. So
Basically, what kind of hard questions should somebody ask before they take the decision to commit themselves to PhD long term? I mean, it's usually, as you said, 3 to 5 years usually,
yeah. So
or more.
if you're thinking, am I ready? Then maybe you're not ready because I didn't ask any hard questions because I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I said, it's the entry point to academia.
See, for example, a lot of people might do it immediately after their master's, like you did. And some people may take some time off work in the industry and then go back to, doing the PhD.
Yeah.
So any kind of difference in approach, anything you would advise to these folks?
Not quite, because see, I also had worked a bit before my master's. After that, I taught a bit. So I haven't gone straight away with the student mindset.
Right.
But if you come straight away with the student mindset, great. Maybe the not so great thing is you're used to being told what to deliver and you haven't quite figured out how to work independently. But if you've worked in the industry, I guess the value of
You think it actually works to your advantage? Because if you have some sort of an industry knowledge, your approach kind of tilts towards practical.
It depends on the topic at hand. Because sure, you want to have the practical side.
Right.
Some PhDs can be very theoretical, but in my experience, those who have applied to do a PhD after industry experience, they will find a way to bring that into their work, so that's good. But like I said, there's many types of outputs, all of which are interesting, can be made interesting. So yeah, if you come from practice, particularly in corporate law, if you come from practice, then you'll think maybe I want to see how this law is working, and it depends on what sort of industry experience. If you've been a practicing lawyer, then your entire PhD may become, if you want to continue with that bent of mind, your entire PhD may become very doctrinal, and I feel that's a bit boring. Many like it. I feel it's a bit boring, but I don't know, if I was supervising it, I'd probably ask them to add a little of something more, because a PhD is where you're going a little beyond what you already know, actually a lot more beyond what you already know. So if you just see it as, hey, it's a fun thing I want to do, explore a topic I'm passionate about, and I'm committed to it, because there will be hard times, so there are peaks and valleys. And in those valleys you just have to remember the peaks, but I think that's just life, right?
Right.
Maybe the loneliness is a factor for people who go to another country to do their PhD, and where they don't already have networks, which was what my situation was in Australia, because in the US we all have so many networks as Indians.
True.
In Australia, I think now we actually, I know of some NALSAR people or some law school people from India, but I don't think there was anyone when I
When
went.
you went.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had to make those networks, which is a bit harder because you're not meeting people every day.
Correct.
So you just have to take the effort to meet people. As a PhD, you're just at the stepping stone. You're almost an academic. You're just one step short of being an academic. So you talk to different academics, talk to different students. It can be fun if you make it that way. Now, as an academic, I always stop on my corridor. We have some PhD students' offices on my corridor. I always stop and chat, because especially those that have come from other countries, and yeah, it's nice to hear their fresh perspectives, because sometimes academics can be working on their areas so wedded to their own thinking and ideology
Right.
for so long, but fresh students are like reading new things, so it's sometimes fun talking to them. So as a PhD, maybe just if you take, even if you're not such a social person, but
Right.
take the initiative to be social, then it could turn out to be fun.
In fact, flowing from that, I had a question. Since I have seen you being very active and dynamic, I wanted to understand the role of institutional support, right? So a lot of initiatives that you take, right? You go for these university collaborations, whether it's teaching or research, presenting papers or writing books. How much of all of this is actually due to the institutional support that you get, and how much of it is actually your own curiosity and personal drive?
So I think for anyone, the research they do is all self-driven. So I think at least in Australia, but I know it's similar in the UK and maybe similar elsewhere.
US as well.
The academic work situation is like this. It's like split between 40% research, 40% teaching, 20% admin service. Some of what I do can actually be treated as service to the academic community, or the editorship of journals, doing dissemination, blogs, getting others. Sometimes I do symposiums on my blog, so giving others a platform.
Yeah.
You can treat it like that. So not everything I do actually gets brownie points in the research side. So you can. It's just, so there's some things that I'm just doing because I like doing them. But even research, it's self-driven, right? Different academics, like teaching, you're assigned teaching. Research, you're supposed to drive your own research. And none of the institutions I've worked in have ever stopped me from doing. They haven't created problems, but I think there's a problem in terms of in my early days as an academic. They both in Australia and New Zealand, and I think it's true in the UK. They wouldn't think very highly of US journal articles.
Okay, why is that?
Because it's a very different system of publishing. In the UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, it's peer review. So there's this sort of more. I don't know. Thinking is, if you're just working in this system, you think the other system is bad. So, but the logic is, you feel like if your paper is reviewed by peers, other academics, then it's good. It's met the litmus test. If it's a US journal, it's student editors that have vetted it. But in my experience, a lot of and I choose based on, I do both. So from the start, I've published across different jurisdictions, and I choose US journals when I'm writing on things that are like my paper on space corporations. It's something so new and fresh, and I feel like in my area there's uptake for fresh ideas. Like I was saying, academics can get very wedded to how they think, right? And maybe I run into if you write against the grain, clearly peer review is more of a challenge, so you have more of an uphill task in countering all of the possible counter arguments to your argument.
Right.
You have to make it so watertight to get it past peer review, and
Right.
even then you might see some pushback, and then you deal. So it can be a little annoying. So
But tell me, in your experience, I think there might be times, I mean, I'm outside the academia, so I may not be the right person to be sort of questioning this, but, you know, sometimes you would want to go the US route because you would want to publish your article, it's reviewed by the students. Which one would you prefer? Like, is it the same across for all your ideas, all
no,
your
it's,
things?
it's topic specific,
Right? Yeah.
So but I don't do so much traditional doctrinal. I'll tell you what I mean by doctrinal work, because outside academia maybe people don't understand the methods and everything, but some people write for judges. So you want, and there's value in this because there may be a difficult case where you need to resolve something, and then judges do cite academic work which help clarify. This is doctrinal work. You're analyzing the law, synthesizing all the cases that came till now, and saying how a new developing area should be dealt with by the judges, consistent with a precedent that exists. And some people do this, and I think that's been the traditional UK style of law journal articles. It's changed now. Now there's
Okay.
also socio-legal work where you're looking at. So, social legal work is where you say there's law on the books, but how is it actually working in practice? And some of my work can be seen in that way, even though it doesn't fit your typical. Because when I say social legal work, you get in mind, at least today, a very activist type of academic, social justice oriented. I'm a little more of a, I don't know, maybe I do a little of both, but I think I'm grounded in more liberal, classical liberal ideas, free market ideas, which makes it very hard to get it through peer review in a world where academia is very, very, very loaded on the extreme left, I think.
Right.
But already it's not doctrinal work, and within the socio-legal setup, the thinking is very ideologically extreme left. So
In fact, I wanted to ask you, right, have you kind of encountered constant challenges because of this? Because when I see the US, India, I think it might be kind of a mixed bag. I don't know what the situation is in Australia, but definitely US, there's this very strong left leaning
Yeah.
across
it's
universities.
academia, and I think it's spreading. It's academia everywhere, but I'm happy to see, like, I know I have a mix of viewpoints in my colleagues in my university, so I know that our students are exposed to different views, so I'm happy about this. But it's also very subject specific. So in corporate law, and when you ask about challenges, I've never actually had challenges in terms of somebody telling me no, you can't write this. It's more so in peer review, the gatekeepers become these other academics, right? So then it's always harder. It's easier to write something which can be less rigorous.
So, Akshay, I'm
Yeah.
assuming if it's a peer-reviewed paper, it would be somebody in the corporate law sphere, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes, so peer review, by the way, is blind, so they don't know whose
Who the
paper.
person is, right?
But in reality, if you're a person who writes with a very different view, it's so easy. You read my work on diversity, nobody else has this view. Yeah.
right,
And
understood.
I know sometimes when I am the reviewer, I can tell who it may be.
So, do you get to know who are reviewing your paper? Do you get to who reviews your paper?
I mean, I have a sense when I see their comments. We all pretend not to, but sometimes in small areas you can't do. It's not something we like to break the blind peer review. No, it's a small area. There's few experts in this area. Sometimes we know who's writing it. Most times we try to be fair. I think it's where like my work on diversity, that
Right.
can be a little charged. So I wrote, since my ideas were so against the grain, I published published in the US, I didn't have a problem because it wasn't academics that were gatekeepers, right? It was, and I think in the US, despite what you're saying about the ideological tilt to the left, I think in terms of journal articles, or I don't know, I've found that I've been able to engage with people. It hasn't, maybe I have.
So they're much more open to ideas, engaging with different kind of
With
perspectives.
new ideas. So one is on ideology, right? What I was saying on space law is more, when you think of space law, you think of international law.
Right.
So if I write about corporations in the space sector, it gets sent to space law experts in, I'm talking about UK and Australia, space law experts who are international law people. They look at it and they're like, oh, this is all crap. No. Why are you not writing about international law stuff? So that paper then went to, it's now published in the Santa Clara Law Review.
Right.
And Santa Clara Law School apparently has a clinic where students
Wow.
work on this area. I didn't know this, but when I got their comments, I was like, this is actually very interesting. I hadn't got these comments from academic peer review, right? So I actually complimented the students and they said they have the clinic and everything.
That's
So,
interesting. Is that because of some influence of NASA and SpaceX there?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
That's interesting. Now that you were talking about your book, The Corporate Diversity Jigsaw, this was your PhD thesis and then you wrote a book as well.
So this is different from the thesis.
From the thesis?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to understand, what were your findings in your research paper, your thesis, and what are your primary findings or, research? What is it that you're trying to sort of put out through your book? And did you see any kind of contrasts, in India and other jurisdictions globally?
Okay, so the PhD thesis, there's a very easy way to tell you my findings. The specific title of the thesis was it was
So
gender.
wait, so the book was not like a natural progression from your paper. It was totally different. Is it like?
Sort of, I'll explain.
Yeah,
So,
right.
because it's everything that wasn't in the thesis. So the thesis said gender diversity on corporate boards.
Yeah.
Right. So the findings were look beyond gender, look beyond the board. Because the way I was viewing diversity and the way many people view diversity, even when they say you need more gender diversity, they say because you get different ideas.
Right.
And as I'll tell you about the method a little later if there's time, because it's an interesting study.
Right.
But as I looked through my empirical study, I found that the different ideas are coming from people from different backgrounds more than gender, because you're socialized into the same way of thinking as you go up the hierarchy.
I
right?
understand what you're saying. Yes.
So I said look beyond gender if you want different ideas. And look beyond the board, because the board has some amount of role, and then you may set policies, etc. But then there's management on a day-to-day basis dealing with things, setting the culture of the, enacting the culture, even if the board has set something on paper, right? So it has to go beyond. It has to. You can have all these quotas and things like that on the board, but you can't have that in management where you rise up the ladder, right? You can't just say, okay, we have one CEO and one quota CEO. That's madness. So I said look beyond the board, and then I guess in the
you were saying this in your paper, in your thesis.
In the thesis.
Yeah.
So basically there were some findings, but after the findings, I said because these findings are not positive, my argument is look beyond the board, look beyond gender. This book is sort of all those pieces that I felt need to be looked at. So I definitely looked beyond the board and beyond gender in this book. So I explore race, I explore age diversity, and how different laws in different countries are trying to deal with it. But the centerpiece of the book really was to say, how do you, and that's the first chapter, how do you define diversity? Because everyone's talking about diversity. Nobody knows. We're sort of talking at cross purposes, because in a way it sounds good to talk, maybe not in the current political scenario, but in the past, it sounded good to talk about diversity. It means like, oh, I'm well-meaning. I'm talking about having more women. I'll say diversity, but what I mean in a public setting, what most people mean is, women and maybe persons of color. So you're looking at, trying to correct discrimination in a way when you say things like this. but then if you see what they're saying about, their reasoning, why should you have diversity in companies on the board? They're saying, oh, it brings different ideas to the table, this and that. They're making very functionalist arguments, mainly because they're trying to appeal to business. They're like, it's good for you, so do it. And I was like, okay, but if it was good for business, why didn't they do it on their own? Maybe they didn't see it. Maybe there's something barring them from seeing it. Maybe there are some unconscious biases, all of that. But as I looked through, maybe I'll tell you the method, because it sort of shows how I'm coming to this insight. So I looked at cases from Delaware court cases. So Delaware is what I picked because in the US, most of the corporate law decisions come from Delaware courts. But Delaware is also code of equity. So you see a lot of fact-based discussions about what happened. You see the story behind the case. It's not too much of, there's the legal stuff, and then you get the story. There's cross examination, you're looking at evidence, and you find out what happened before, when things went south, who said what in the board, what went wrong. So I looked at those sort of cases. So the limitation of that study was that, of course, I'm looking at all the bad apples. Something went wrong, so they went to court. But I wasn't looking at it from a legal, doctrinal, what was the holding of the case. I was looking at the story of the case. And when I coded the data from these cases, I was also looking at who are the board directors, what diversity was there. Initially, I was looking at women, gender diversity. As I went, and I'm looking for, what did directors do differently? And I found that, hey, the different behavior isn't coming from women. In one interesting case, it came from someone who'd spent time in the military before coming onto the board. He was the board chair, and he was like, fire the CEO immediately. So this sort of background of the person, that matters more in terms of having a different perspective.
Right.
And also I felt some things that went wrong happened because of management. And the board did nothing different. So I felt, okay, if you really want a different way of doing things, look at the management as well. So this is how I came to my findings, looking almost at real world scenario, but through the lens of those stories in those cases.
Right.
So when I wrote this book, I said, here are all the things we don't seem to talk about when we talk about diversity. So in the defining diversity chapter, I talk about, actually, diversity should include viewpoint diversity, diversity of perspectives, including ideological
I think
diversity.
the reason why something of that level has not been incorporated is because it's difficult to quantify that, or it's difficult to sort of get people with different ideologies. People might just kind of shift from their ideologies, right? It's not going to be constant. And also, I understand your point, right? I totally appreciate that, because, if there are 5 women with this same social conditioning, same economic strata, the viewpoints are going to be similar. And if they come from very similar backgrounds, similar city upbringing or whatever, I totally get the point you're making. But what about the fact that there have been, years of underrepresentation, and you also had personal experience where you were interviewed with another person, but the male candidate's face gets sort of shown in the so there are these biases which is there. So, but at the same time, we can't like pinpoint everything and say, hey, gender diversity will rectify everything. That's not what it is. How do you sort of strike that balance?
I actually talk about unconscious bias because many times on the board, when you're hiring, you have this sort of very undefinable thing called you're the right fit. What's a right fit? Someone that you feel is like you, they'll get along with you. There's a story about Indra Nui needing her husband to get a membership in a club because there was no membership for women when she was the CEO of PepsiCo.
Right.
And because it's just been like that for so many years, and it's self-perpetuating. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
But I actually do deal with this issue of why women are not naturally coming through the pipeline and getting to those levels, because usually who are board directors, they are former CEOs, CFOs, someone from a C-suite cadre, right? So I look at that, what's going on. Some people genuinely opt out of the pipeline, and this is because society and your own the firm that you're working in doesn't support your additional caring responsibilities, which one solution has been to have, like, outside the outside the work life, you're saying everyone take responsibility. It's not just the woman's role to care for children, but then it still happens that women choose to take time off to be with their children. So sometimes there's that, but then added to that, companies aren't supportive of flexible working. So I have this piece, this book came out after COVID, so I was writing a little about that COVID as well in the book. During COVID, suddenly everyone worked from home and it was okay.
Yeah.
Before,
yeah.
it was a woman's problem. If you say, I can't come, can I do this call? No one wanted to have a call
True.
online. So it's a lot of it was mindset, right? So there's a whole chapter in my book on culture, because I say you have to deal with corporate culture that's welcoming to women, but also to people of different views. And I mentioned James Damore in Google being fired.
Was he the GC of Google?
No, he was just an engineer, but
Okay,
he
okay.
published a memo which
Okay.
about diversity, and by the way, that was triggered by the excessive DEI trainings, etc. But anyway,
So he wrote against it?
I think he wrote
Questioning.
ultimately against, not, yeah, maybe more questioning, but I think he wrote quoting a lot of scientific studies that you and I could dispute, but there's still scientific studies. You can take it seriously and disagree with it. You don't fire someone for that. But it had reached a point, even when I was working on this topic, it reached a point where it's almost forbidden to say certain things about diversity. So I think my argument is against quotas. Apart from everything else, I talk about how there's a stigma attached to a woman director after a law comes in. India has a law saying you have to appoint at least one woman director.
Right.
I'll come to the funny India story in a bit, but I say that even anywhere, even if it's like not a specific hard law, but a soft law saying 30% women, and then you hire after that, even if they're very meritorious, there's this stigma attached to, oh, you were just hired after this. And in fact, I've heard things like this after I got promoted. So I'm sure everyone hears things like this because someone is always unhappy about someone else's promotion and then you're looking for something. So I don't know if the quota solves anything, but it's brought some. I have a chapter talking about the costs and benefits. So that's what I call my law and economic style analysis of these sort of laws. But the India story was fun because initially they introduced this law. Saying you should have at least one woman director in each company's board. And a lot of company directors, the promoter groups in India, which are the controlling shareholders, they tended to appoint their wives, which means that you don't want somebody to question you, to have a different perspective on the board. You want somebody to nod along, right? Otherwise, why? And you've not created opportunities for women. No, you've just got someone from your home. So then they had to correct it by changing the law and saying, no, that woman director should be an independent director. So clearly, mandatory quotas aren't working because businesses aren't taking it seriously. If you don't take it seriously, you won't comply in the spirit of the law. So you're not going to get the gains of what you think diversity will provide.
Yeah, actually, it'd be very interesting to have people from different ideologies and different, thought process around a certain issue, right? But how do you check that? Recently I was called on a research panel. It was confidential, but they asked me specifically, what is your political, and I just wrote, I think initially I was like, I didn't mention it, and they wanted me to specifically like mention what is it, because we need to ensure that there is equal representation about. So there are places which are taking note of this.
Very interesting. Thank you. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You're right that you can't check an ideology. So what I recommend in my book is that it's a firm-specific solution. Each firm has different needs. Maybe in the current geopolitical situation that we're in, maybe if it's a semiconductor chip company, you want to have someone who can navigate this political environment. Not every board member needs to be like that, but maybe somebody like that is helpful. Maybe some very big companies have to have the door open to lobbying both sides of, there's one government in power today, that'd be someone else in power tomorrow.
True. So that brings me to the next question, Akshaya. In your book, The Corporate Diversity Jigsaw, you've examined diversity in the context of companies like SpaceX. Before we delve into this, I want to personally state this, right? The first time I saw the SpaceX rocket come back to the space, the launch pad, right? It literally gave me goosebumps. it was like watching science fiction turned into reality, right? And if someone hasn't watched it yet, please go and watch it. So in companies like SpaceX, right, what is meaningful diversity like? It's also headed by a COO, female COO, Gwynne Shotwell. And then you have these founder CEOs like Elon Musk, who's a very visible critique of DEI initiatives and diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, right? And he's very vocal about that on X as well. And it's not very specific to SpaceX. This is kind of happening with all these large tech companies where they're either rolling back these DEI programs or they're relabeling it. So, how do you think a board should look at, competence, representation, meaningful representation, as we were talking about it, performance, especially when these companies are delivering exceptional, extraordinary results?
Okay, there's so much in there, but let me also mention that I watched those launches live. It's
Right.
great. I've caught many of those live. Anyway, so
You watched it live? Oh,
yeah.
I mean, on like there in
No, no,
Star.
no. When it's happening online, the live
Online,
telecast.
online,
So
yeah.
it's really, I mentioned that because you hear the countdown, you hear the expectation, you don't know if it's going to land properly.
Right.
All of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah.
But I'll start by talking about a Brazilian company. I think it's mentioned. I've mentioned it in my book, but I wrote it in 2022. I don't remember exactly. This Brazilian company with women founders. I think they said they're only going to hire women because they choose to work with women.
Okay.
Do you have a problem with that?
Was it a very company specific thing? Like, was the company for women something to do with?
I don't know, but
Okay.
it was like, imagine you and I come together, start a company. We choose who we work with.
Right, right,
Initially, no one's going to object to it because it's a small startup.
right.
And maybe no one ever will because it's women. I'm telling you, when we talk about diversity, it's code for why don't you have more women. It's not code for why don't you have male perspectives, right? So you have to sometimes break the
I'll
hypocrisy.
tell you that, like a funny story here
Yeah.
to interject you. So in-house legal counsel teams, for some reason, are full of women. I don't know. That'll be the only exceptional team. That'll be the exception to the rule, where you have rest of the teams with male-dominated teams, and in-house legal counsels across companies will be mostly female-dominated. Okay, and I don't know how this happened.
Maybe I have 10 candidates that interviewed, and maybe the best ones are women, and maybe I just keep hiring the best ones when
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
completely gender blind.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, and it may so happen that in a certain area, like in SpaceX, when it was new, I think even now they continue to have this culture. But I've read a lot about how when it started out, it was in this very, very look, they're in an industry that needs a lot of funding, but they're a
Exactly.
scrappy company that's trying to do things with less funding. But they're trying to be innovative. They're doing something that's exciting a whole lot of people like you and me. And also, they're launching payloads belonging to other countries, so they're making it accessible. Anyway, so they have this grand enterprise when they start. I can recommend this book Lift Off by Eric Berger.
Yes. It's in my Kindle. I haven't read it. Yes.
So it's and I've quoted some things from that book in my book while talking about the culture at SpaceX, because when I talk of culture, remember I said you can change the outcomes to diversity by making your company more inclusive. So women don't choose to leave when things get hard because your company is trying to make it less hard for you. So similarly, culture, it depends on the type of people you want to attract and retain. So there they wanted people who can work long hours, who are really invested in the work, and that did attract a woman like Gwen Shotwell, right? So it may not be, more women may not choose that life, but a few do. But I don't think they went out to not hire women. And what I mentioned about SpaceX in about the culture in the book is, I think in two things. One was where Elon Musk had this idea of hiring people. He says go to the best schools and try to hire the best candidates.
Okay.
And I think there's more to this, but eventually somehow he gets these the contacts, whatever, and they come and join him at lesser pay than what all the big companies can offer them,
Right.
because they're able to contribute. He encourages disagreement. He said, challenge me, disagree with me.
Okay.
So because they're in an area where you want to find solutions, you want all the top brains to have ideas and to voice them. And I think there's a story from NASA, either either in this book or in one of my other works, which I've referenced that NASA story where uh, two employees found a problem with something and they're trying and trying and trying to tell their bosses, but they weren't heard because the bosses don't want to hear no, they don't want to hear that they're wrong. But a company that wants to hear your say, what you have to say, and then you send a rocket up to space and you realize one little thing there was your contribution. So many people went there because they could do that with lesser pay. And I think on what I've quoted is also a Glassdoor survey where you can look at employees ratings of
Ratings,
corporate
yeah.
culture, and SpaceX is rated very highly. That might sound shocking because of what Musk is saying now about DEI.
Correct.
But what he's saying is it's a current phenomenon, right? And you mentioned a lot of tech companies are rebranding. That's all a reaction to Trump being anti-DEI. So they, like Google, for example.
Recently, Meta sort of, I'm not sure, I think it was Meta, which kind of was relooking at these DEI.
And Google says, I think they've changed or removed those titles from their website. But I think I read something where they have internally told their employees that nothing will change. We've
Okay.
just sort of made the DEI stuff less significant and prominent. So it was fashionable to talk about DEI in the past, not so fashionable now. But I think Musk was never one of these people that was going out and saying, I champion diversity. But you can champion diversity without talking about it. If you're just focused on talent,
Right.
then you don't have some of the unconscious biases. He's sort of himself a maverick, right? Not quite part of the group. And I think it takes mavericks to just hire random people for their abilities without going through the whole, are you a good fit culturally? Because you yourself, such a CEO is himself not a good fit anywhere. So
Right.
He's an interesting case, actually.
Right. In one of your papers, Akshay, you talk about this term hashtag capitalism, where you discuss this shift where shareholders, customers, employees, or even online communities kind of influence the corporate behavior. You also share the striking example of GameStop in the context of the US. So, walk us through what actually happened in GameStop and why did it become such a big thing for corporate lawyers to sit up and take note of it?
So hashtag capitalism, I think, is beyond GameStop. So maybe the starting of all this is something I wrote about in my book, this one, the old book on diversity, where I think there's a chapter on social movements where I spoke about Me Too and Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
And how these are hashtag enabled movements, right? They really took off because of the social media turbocharging, amplifying that voice, and then more people came added on. The really interesting thing from a corporate perspective is that, okay, you have these movements, and then companies are responding to that, responding initially in terms of words, and then like, we support whatever cause your movement is about. And then the response was, then open your purse, and then they started to donate. And then there were similar such smaller incidents after Me Too and Black Lives Matter, where a company's policy is criticized. If it becomes big enough on social media, the company may even go and change its policy, not just for that customer but for other customers. Like, it's our company policy from now on has changed. No one went to court, no litigation, nothing, and the company has changed its policy. So this sort of hashtag movements enabling a different way in which companies do things, that is the phenomenon I name as hashtag capitalism. And I think everyone sat up and took notice during GameStop, the company GameStop, which was you could loan video games, buy video games from this company. People of a certain generation had fond memories of this company. Those were who got involved, and it's a very US based phenomenon, but because it happened during the pandemic, all of us took notice. But a whole lot of things came together for this to become a big deal. So to begin at the beginning, some people started to short the stock of GameStop. When you short the stock, you're just betting against a company. So you're you've borrowed the stock and you're selling so that you can then buy it back at a lower price, because your selling has caused uh, it's not just that you're causing the stock price to go down, it's that you know that the company fundamentals are currently not being reflected in the stock price. You know that it's going to go down, and so you bet against the company, and enrich yourself through that. So short selling is traditionally sort of seen, many people don't like this, including Elon Musk. But I like to mention when I talk about this in my papers to my students that even in Casino Royale, the Bond movie, the villain was a short seller.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's an interesting
So
trivia.
it's seen as a bad thing because you don't like somebody that bets against others and enriches themselves because of that, right? So in the GameStop moment in time, it was the institutional players, the hedge funds and the big guys basically that were short selling, betting against GameStop. And then you had the let's it's the David and Goliath story. In this story, where the people of a certain age start to say, no, 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 we like this company. We don't like people who are betting against this company. We are going to buy its stock and we will hold. We won't sell. So the person at the heart of this story that brought this movement was Keith Gill, finfluencer or an influencer in the financial investing space.
Okay.
So he's got a whole community. He's talking to them on Reddit, on YouTube, and he has different names, Roaring Kitty and some others that I can't mention on other forums. He has all these names. People are coming. But the really interesting part of this story is this happens during COVID. Why are they all listening to him and doing this? One is their love for GameStop.
Right.
But second, also they found this sense of community of people of a similar age group at a time when everyone's isolated, particularly young people. Many were not living with families. So they found this community. Every time the stock goes up or, they have something to celebrate, they have this method of celebrating together. They buy chicken tenders. They call it tendies. So they develop all these cultural things within that community. So that's how it started.
Okay.
And it's sort of less a corporate governance issue at that point. It's more the institutional players were very unhappy that they've shorted the company but it's just going up, and then they had to take huge losses when they eventually wanted to cut their losses and buy it back. So eventually it seemed to cause a lot of problems there. But the thing that happened after that is it's brought so many people who weren't investing in the past. It's brought them into the market. They've now bought these shares. They've invested. They've found community talking about it. So they start to invest in some other companies. And these are, the term retail investors. In the past, when we say retail investors, we just mean retail clients of some funds, ETFs. Here, when we say retail investors, we're talking about people who have now gone and invested directly. In the US, this entire phenomenon, another thing that drove it was this app called Robinhood. There was a lot of sort of gamification features on the app. So alongside meeting community, talking to people on social media, on this app, every time you buy stock, you have like confetti and all this sort of dopamine hits, right? So just the way social media works. So the app made things very easy to invest in small amounts. You didn't have to have large investments. So all this has really brought a huge change. Now, it's been a few years since the pandemic. Retail investors have flooded the market in the US, but it's a phenomenon that's spread outside the US. So currently, Tesla has a lot of retail investors.
Exactly.
Disney has a lot of retail investors.
Okay.
And I mentioned Disney because they actually played a role in corporate governance. Recently, when there was a proxy contest where a slew of directors were put to vote, and then Disney management specifically put out a video appealing to retail investors to vote for management nominees. And then the other side also put out a video appealing to this group. So they're now forced to be reckoned with. They're communicating, they're coordinating what we used to call, there's transaction costs. Small shareholders are not going to spend time and energy coordinating activity, reading up on a company. All that's gone because now they're coordinating on social media. and generational trends have caused this to seem like a recreational activity to talk to other like-minded people, invest. This has grown further and further now. People see retail investing as a sort of a way to express their uh, interest in socially responsible funds,
Tell me,
companies.
what's the difference between a retail investor and a shareholder?
Shareholders, you can call them shareholders.
Okay.
Shareholder
So it's the same thing.
it's a broad term, right?
Okay.
You can have institutional investors, they're also shareholders.
Right.
Retail investors are basically unsophisticated individual investors. In the
Okay.
past, these were the clients of funds. You
Hmm.
wouldn't go and invest like for, I don't know, $50 or $100. It's too small an amount. You
Right.
do it through a fund,
Mm.
right? So currently, and to distinguish two scholars who are my friends, Sergio and Grimito Ricci and Christina Soto, they've coined the term wireless investors.
Okay.
So you can use wireless investors to distinguish, because these are retail investors of this moment in time who have come through the internet, who have coordinated through the internet, and they're investing through these apps that have made it easier to invest, and then they're interacting with the CEO. CEOs now do online polls in companies where you have a lot of retail investors, or they may put out videos like Disney did to talk to their retail investors. So this is like a piece of the hashtag capitalism story. The rest of it is how stakeholders. So a consumer angrily tweets about or posts on X about a company, say an airline, and then the airline,
Usually responds quickly.
because there's some people who look at it as well, right? But you'll get a response. You may have to wait a little. Your problem may be solved. But imagine, and this is an actual case, a Canadian singer lost his bag, or I think his guitar was broken or something like this. And he made a song about the whole thing. So
Okay.
that's more entertaining. That went viral. And I think he also, or maybe that's a different case, where they actually paid X to boost their post. So it went to more people. But in both these cases, it goes viral. This guy's song went viral actually, and then it's a bigger issue for the company. So this was the
Did
company.
he actually mention the company?
Yes.
Oh,
I think the song is called United Broke My Guitar or something.
Okay.
So then United comes out and changes their policy. So this whole policy change on what happens when a customer's baggage is damaged because of this one thing that goes viral, right? So I think all of this is part of the bigger hashtag capitalism story, where companies now talk to various stakeholders and respond in different ways, because social media has changed the incentives at
Exactly.
work.
Right. So now that we're actually talking about hashtag capitalism, I think there's one individual who has learned to use social media most effectively, rather wield social media most effectively, and that's none other than Elon Musk. So I think as recently as July 2025, in your blog, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Corporate Governance, you mentioned wanting to teach this dream course on Elon Musk called The Law of Elon Musk. You also call him an influencer, and celebrity CEO. I couldn't agree more, because he has, I think, more than 230 million followers on X alone. Of course, that's the only social media he's on. He owns the platform. And one tweet, one post by him literally moves the crypto markets, influences political outcomes. He is like managing what's half a dozen companies with the civilizational level consequence. So I can totally understand when you say studying corporate governance through the lens of this one particular individual. That can be fascinating. So just tell us about what was your thought process behind wanting to teach this course on Elon Musk.
I told you this is a tongue-in-cheek blog, but so much of my, we can call this podcast the Elon Musk show, because we brought him up in every
Almost every other conversation, every other question, I think.
yeah. And I think it's because a lot of my research, different areas that I work on, are on sort of new emerging issues. And in a lot of those stories, someone who's like Elon Musk, a maverick CEO exploring new avenues, they're creating the vacuum for which law needs to be
Exactly.
or maybe for us to question if existing law is actually
Frameworks.
fit for purpose,
Correct.
or maybe are we already over regulating things. But I do have free market tendencies, because I feel like sometimes one of my chapters in this book talking about costs and benefits of regulation, in so many of the types of diversity laws I analyze, I talk about costs exceeding the benefits. So we have to be so careful bringing in
Where you need to have the laws and where you need to sort of
sit back and do something softer, or maybe not do something, right? Let me explain. But you had some question that I didn't answer.
So, what was your thought process
about
around actually wanting to start this course?
okay, so he comes up in a lot of, I teach a course, by the way, called Corporations, Technology and the Law, which is literally how I set up this course to think about my book. So it's literally the almost
I'm
like
really
the
looking forward to your book. Yes.
teaching course version of the book. In that, I bring up a lot of Elon Musk comes up a lot. Even another course I taught, corporate governance, so executive compensation, there's a case about him, something else. So there's something interesting that makes you question first principles everywhere in what he does. So I feel like the law of Elon Musk is basically uh, helping us look at various parts of corporate governance in a way that pushes the boundaries of our existing thinking on issues, right? So it'll be so much fun. The reason I just call it a dream course is because he's now moved over to the evil side. He's become very political. In the past, so many of us who liked his products and the work he does, it's more because of the entrepreneurial flair.
Right.
And how so for example, in SpaceX, when in the beginning all the contracts were going to a specific like the company that the state had a relationship with, he actually went to court, challenged that, made himself part of the system. So it's something, you don't get such individuals every day. It's made an impact on the world. So as corporate law and corporate governance academics, thinkers, scholars, we can actually sit back and question whether some of the laws have been hindering progress, right? So it's quite interesting to his different in his life, maybe challenges, but as academics we can think of them as amazing opportunities to think and research.
That brings me to the next question, Akshaya. So I think this is a constant thing that comes up, right? Legal frameworks versus innovation, whether it's promoting it or it's hindering it. So, in your experience, in your work that you've done, have you had instances where you've seen that clearly play out?
Yeah. So much.
Yeah.
The fact where legal frameworks hinder innovation, I think most of my corporate diversity jigsaw book is talking about this, because what I advocate in the end is about firm specific solutions, because I feel like every company is different, right? So the solution should be tailored to their circumstances. So if you have a law like 30% women, or diversity is the example I'm giving, it can be any law, right? So you have a law with one sort of solution. So in trying to comply with the law, take any other example, maybe modern slavery legislation, where you have to do a whole lot of compliance of your supply chain. Have you checked this, checked that? So there's a whole industry, consulting industry, that has grown, that helps companies with compliance. So it's a whole lot of money spent on tick the box compliance. Yes, we've introduced this, yes, we've done that, we've done this. But in reality, have you actually created a change in culture, or a change for diversity? You have to think of a change in culture. For AI, you have to think about, have you just introduced these little things that you've been asked to do, like maybe cybersecurity checks? Okay, that's not an AI thing, but okay, where you're dealing with a lot of data. Okay, have you met these cybersecurity frameworks, whatever? But maybe your specific product has posed a new issue you haven't bothered with. With AI, what comes up most is human in the loop. but have you come up with a process for that human in the loop to be doing what they're supposed to be doing properly? Is someone checking that? Are you changing the person who is the human in the loop? Because humans can themselves suffer from cognitive biases as they work with AI for a long time. So a lot of these things, sometimes the challenge is that regulators don't have the answers. These are new things that the company is developing. The knowledge doesn't lie with the state or the regulator, but the knowledge is being created on a day-to-day basis by people who work there. That's why I said some employees in NASA earlier, they said there's a problem here, because they saw the problem. They're working with the tech. So you can think of creating, I don't know what's the best way to do this, but there's a direction that I advocate for, and that direction is to try and include companies in the solution you want to create.
For example, I think you've also written a lot on space sector, right? So, what has been your experience when you've been researching and writing about space sector and corporate governance?
That's a bit different, because in the space sector, it's a new sector where all the laws have been tailored to state governed bodies. Suddenly private players entering the market is absolutely new. So that's actually quite different from what I'm talking about, where we already have compliance frameworks, etc. In, you're already dealing with companies, you have these frameworks in place, but many of them are not fit for purpose. In the space sector, I think some of the problems now are, do we have the right infrastructure in place to finance for little startups to access finance to innovate within that sector? Once you're in that sector, are existing regulations, licensing regulations, fit for purpose for the sorts of low budget things that you want to do? Maybe just getting your approvals and everything is taking up a lot more money. So is it chilling innovation in some ways? So that's a little different, because it's such a new frontier altogether. Whereas the AI stuff, you have laws on AI, all of that, but like the EU AI Act, so that's hard law, but a lot of it tries to address, you do specific actions, and if you don't, if something happens, then you can be liable. So those are all ex post solutions.
So let's move to one of the last questions before we move to the rapid fire round. The Tesla compensation saga, right? So what happened in that case was basically the 56 billion compensation was approved by the board, and the shareholders ratified it, and then the Delaware Chancery Court struck it down on the grounds of, I think, process issues. I'm not entirely sure. This is why I need your inputs on that. And then the Supreme Court of Delaware actually sort of reversed the decision and then upheld the 56 billion pay package. So when you examine the arc of this case, what was really at stake here? What were the main issues from a corporate law perspective?
And also from my perspective, which may be a slightly different take.
Sure.
But I think from a corporate law perspective, what they were trying to get at is, hey, you haven't followed the procedures. And the procedures, really what the sticking point was for the judges there was the compensation committee wasn't very independent from Musk. So you're deciding a compensation package for him, and everything is done through independent subcommittees. Those are sort of the ways in which you can ensure independence. I've written other work in the past to say that, this whole idea of independence in corporate governance is suspect, just like how I was saying this whole idea of blind peer review in academia is suspect. You have to understand how things work in practice. Anyway, so the idea there was, look, it wasn't very independent. It wasn't, they seemed to be taking instructions from Elon and negotiating for him, rather than trying to negotiate independently. But that case was brought by someone who owned like 8 shares in the company. Most of the shareholders were very happy with him getting compensated. And everything in the news sounds like it's a huge compensation package. which it is, but he would get nothing if he didn't achieve those goals. And those goals for anyone seem unachievable. Anyone but Elon, he's achieved them and he's getting
Right.
yeah. So when it was struck down, he immediately, another thing I really am interested in is regulatory competition, and how I mentioned how a lot of companies are registered in Delaware in the US because of the corporate law there being something predictable, there's certainty, all of this. But suddenly, when there's a case like this where shareholders voted,
Correct.
what is the role of corporate law generally? It's to facilitate business, right?
Right.
You're not there to take away what shareholders want to do,
Right.
ultimately. So that in itself struck me as a little problematic. And perhaps all the shareholders who, when Elon said maybe we should move to Texas, all the shareholders he did a poll on Twitter
I
before
think
on
he even moved, right?
yeah, now
Yeah,
the mood.
yeah.
But before the actual shareholder vote, he did a vote on X because of the retail shareholders involved. So everyone found this to be unfair. And I have a blog post about this where I said I was commenting on some news. So the media spin on this is always anti big business, anti CEOs that are paid a lot. But I think you have to look at the specific case, right? Why is he paid a lot? And
Right.
it was conditional. It wasn't that he'll definitely get paid a lot. He worked on the basis of that promise, and then it didn't happen. So I think I'd use the word unfairness in that post. And now the Supreme Court judgment that's come out, I think at the end of last year when I'd already started my holiday, so I haven't blogged on that. But that case, I've had like a quick look. The judgment is in terms of equity, so which is unfairness at the end of the day.
Okay. So, just one last question, Akshaya. When Akshaya is not being Professor Kamal Nath, what does she do? I mean, what is your off time like?
Oh, I'm just lazy. Okay, I probably I get a cup of coffee, and I like to take walks, and then just not think, turn off my mind, walk around, look at things. I can also just stay home, be lazy, read books, binge watch. Yeah, just nothing special. I think a lot of my work is something that I like. So I told you, some Sundays I'm happily working, but some Sundays I'm out exploring.
So, you're based out of Australia, but when you come to Bangalore for the holidays, what do you usually end up doing?
Oh, I just usually it's a shorter holiday. So most of the time, given a chance, I would like to stay home. Home being my parents' home. And then there's so many relatives, friends to meet. My usual. I have an inertia to never get out of home, so I'm
Okay.
pushed out to go and do things. I'm glad I got myself out here.
Thanks for that. Thanks for doing that.
And I visit my sister in Pondicherry. I eat a lot of local food.
Right. So, let's move to the rapid fire round. Melbourne or Bangalore?
Oh, uh,
Is it difficult for you to answer or is it very easy?
very difficult because I sort of was a kid in Bangalore.
Right.
And never lived here as an adult. But Melbourne was
No,
where.
but till you went to NALSAR and all of that.
Yeah, that's
16, 15, 16.
Yeah, so that's too young. Melbourne is where I grew into myself.
Correct.
And I feel I'm a lot more independent. Like I said, I have a lot of inertia when I'm here because I have my family here. I'm just happy to stay home. But when I'm out, I make efforts to go
Okay,
out.
let's make this slightly easier for you. If you were to choose to either settle down in Melbourne or in Bangalore, which one would you choose?
I'd choose Canberra. It's my current home.
Okay, correct. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, one city that really changed how you think about work.
Oh, maybe Canberra actually, because I live close to work. I walk to work, and I like all the bird sounds as I walk around. So it just makes me feel calmer about work, and just having, we have like a stream on campus. Sometimes I walk to the stream. So maybe Canberra.
All right. One course you loved teaching more than you expected.
More than I expected.
Yeah.
I always expect to like teaching corporate courses, but because of like a teaching gap, I taught into a course called Litigation and Dispute Resolution, which you can think of as a civil procedure course, but also with some strategic focus. So here's a problem, here are the procedural rules, what will you do, what sort of case will you file, which jurisdiction would you file in. It ended up feeling like how you might advise your company as a course of action. And I thought it's not my area, not so much fun. I only like class actions. But when I taught that, I loved it because we teach that course to later year students. It's one of the last courses they do. So you can
What do
see.
you mean by later year students? Like final year,
Yeah.
PhD?
No. Within
The
the
JD folks.
we have like an LLB degree and a JD degree, and they're merged in many of our classes, but towards the end of their course, right? So they you can see everything coming together for them. All the substantive law that they've learned comes together in this discussion. So I know these students from previous courses that I've taught when they were going through their law school, and then towards the end I see how they've also grown, and the course brings different areas together, so I enjoyed that.
Okay. We'll have to keep it short
Sorry.
because it's rapid fire. A paper or piece of work you're most proud of?
Proud of everything. Maybe all the
Picking your
diversity stuff, because they're all going against the grain. I feel like I'm fighting a lonely battle, so maybe all of that.
Great. Best conference city and the worst?
Oh, I've never had a worst. I've enjoyed everything, but maybe Catania in Sicily. I really
The
loved
best?
it.
Yeah? Okay.
And I don't know if I can go again. So it was just different and amazing. So
Okay. Besides The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, what other books do you keep returning to?
uh, I'm currently reading the Wheel of Time series. I think it seems like a lifelong commitment. It has like 24 books, but I return to Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, short stories by Asimov, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I quote from in my papers sometimes. All the
Foundation series.
the sci-fi and the fun fantasy stuff.
Okay. Any favorite movies?
I have a favorite show, Mad Men.
Mad Men.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've gone back to it a few times.
No, if you like science fiction, did you watch The Three Body Problem on Netflix?
No.
That was very interesting because I can't sit through most of the shows on Netflix, but that was one which I thought was really,
I
really
think
good.
somebody told me about it and I've forgotten. Now I'll go and check it out.
You should. It's highly recommended. From somebody who rarely watches Netflix.
But I'll also recommend Mad Men if you rarely watch. Then you like
I
it.
really like it.
So ideas show, right? So,
yeah. And one thing you miss about India when you're abroad, when you're in Australia?
South Indian food, because you can't find that.
Oh, okay.
You can find more North Indian food. Family, parents, friends. But I'm just so used to being unmoored that when I'm there, I'm there. When I'm here, I'm here. So.
Okay. If you weren't an academic, what would you be doing?
I have no answer. I have no idea. Yeah.
Come on, something. You'll have to pick something.
I don't know, because I think before
you can't think of life beyond being an academic.
Yeah, I feel like I found my thing, because when I was in a law firm, I was like, oh, maybe I like this work, but maybe I like my sleep as well. And I like to be very self-directed. I don't like someone breathing down my neck. And also...
You like your autonomy.
Yeah, and someone I think told me, it didn't strike me then, but someone who was like started a few years before me at the firm said, oh my God, you have time to read whole cases in a law firm? And I'm like, I just want to get the whole picture before I advise the client. Maybe I'm of a mind to be an academic, but before I ever went to law school, I wanted to be a writer of fiction. So who knows?
You could still be that. I mean, you've already written 2 books. I mean, the second one is coming sometime this year. So one question you wish your students asked more often?
Nothing, because I like students who are curious. So I like listening to them and hearing what they think. It's not something that I have prefixed in my mind they should ask.
Or
this.
Do you think there's something that you expect people to question but they don't usually? Something that you've noticed across batches?
I think I question them and they're forced to uh, many times in that course, corporations, technology, and the law, I'm asking, how do you feel about this? And I think it's about just getting them to think, and then they will think.
Okay. One thing you would change about academia?
Maybe the lack of intellectual diversity, viewpoint diversity.
Okay. So, Akshaya, thank you. It has been a pleasure. I wish you the very best in your future endeavors. This has been a very thoughtful conversation.